Cable Suite 541's coverage of the 86th Annual Academy Awards is brought to you by ACMC's Conneaut Family Health Center. Dr. Rufus' office is open to patients on March 3rd. CBiz Retirement Plan Services. Learn more at cbiz.com/RPS. Mix 97.1, today's best mix. Magic 102.5, the best of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Suite 224 Internet. And the Conneaut Telephone Company.
Hey, today we thought we'd show you the second half of the interview from yesterday featuring Randy Haberkamp talking about the differences that the Academy members vote on in their movie selections versus what the average fan likes. So here's the second half of that interview.
The other question I wanted to ask you was kind of lead you here with this, but I don't know if it was this past year. Was that the year of Argo and
Yes.
All those great films, Zero Dark 30?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to struggle to think of them all. I felt like this year, that year, that Hollywood really got back to storytelling and found a new standard of excellence. And I tell you what, this calendar year has been tough on me as a moviegoer because now I think they've raised the bar so high. I'm just so judgmental of a weak film now. Do you agree, disagree?
I had thought so until just recently. I mean, I was lucky enough to go to the Telluride Film Festival, which is in September, and it kind of is where they unveil a lot of the films that are coming out for the fall. And it was a great festival, and I got to see Gravity, and I got to see 12 Years a Slave, and I got to see several films that are, being buzzed about right now. And there are several films I haven't seen yet that I'm equally excited about. And it's one of those things where just when I think I've seen it all, somebody comes along and pulls something out, and then too, a couple of films come along you really were hoping for, and then they're like, oh, that was so disappointing. But at the same time, that's part of the race. That's part of the fun. And again, the film I love is something somebody sits there and goes, "Are you crazy?" Again, it's the discussion. It's the culture of it. It's the exchange. Sure. Enjoy it immensely.
Don't you think movies are at least, maybe not the top of the line because they can hold their water at any point, but don't you think expectations play a lot into the movie-going experience?
Yeah.
If somebody tells you it's the best movie that's ever been made, it's hard to walk in a theater and be satisfied. But if somebody tells you, I went to see that in a theater, it was horrible, you get it on DVD because you're snowed in Ohio, and you're like, what was wrong with that?
Yeah. No, yes, that plays a lot into it. I refused. Usually I read reviews just far enough to see whether they like the movie or not. That's it. I like seeing films as soon as they come out as much as possible because I want to make my own decision as opposed to hearing from 90 people. But you can't always do that. And there are also films where I look at it and I go, okay, I really need to see that in a theater. I need to see that in 3D. I need to see that in IMAX or whatever it is. Or I need to see that in a really good theater. And then there are other films where I'm like, I can wait on that. And I think that has a lot to do with the success of the film for me, is whether I feel that need to go out and see it in a theater. And it's almost like a badge of respect that I'm
Sure.
paying the film. And sometimes you get disappointed, but I still, when I see a film in a theater that really does what movies do, I realize why sitting at home watching it on TV in my pajamas isn't quite the same thing.
Sure,
Especially if you see it in an audience full of people and
Right.
you see it on a big screen, whether it's 3D or not, whatever it is, whatever that technology is. There's something about watching it with a group. A comedy is never as funny at home alone as it is watching it with a group in a theater that's really with the movie.
Sure.
And a suspense film is never as suspenseful at home as it is watching it in a theater. And I really cherish that, and I grew up with it. And I hope to maintain that. I hope to instill that in future generations of what that's about, even though it's shifting and people are now, doing two things at once while they're
Right.
watching their multiple screens. I love it when people feel engaged enough in a film to put that all away and just
Right.
get lost in it.
That's awesome. Last question, and I can't have a high-level discussion about the Oscars, and you already used the magic word once in our conversation. It's amazing to me when I watch other award shows, especially when you get into the musical category, where people, in my vernacular, I just say, it's freak show stuff. And then I watch maybe an old documentary about Las Vegas, and some of the old timers bemoan the fact that, after sundown, everybody wore a tux and you got gussied up and you went out to dinner, you went to a show, but everybody held a standard. And I think it's remarkable because when we've talked over the years, there's such a conscious movement, I believe, by the Academy to maintain the glamour, the Hollywood glamour, that really started back with the first Oscars, and really police that to show respect both to the history and to the art form. Can you give us an insider's view on the priority of the glamour, the Hollywood glamour preservation and the classiness that's associated with this event?
It's very interesting because, it went through a period where it almost became uncool in the 60s and 70s, and there was this kind of counterculture thing going on. And there's still some of that to some degree, but I think that whole glamour quotient and that whole respect, as you call it, has to do a lot with people's passion for movies and for the art form of movies. And I think that it's too tough a business to be in to not really have a passion for it. And, no matter who it is, I mean, if you interview or talk to just about any filmmaker, whether it's, somebody who's a visual effects supervisor or somebody who's an editor or, a top box office star, there's always something about going to the movies and seeing movies and being inspired by movies that's at the core of why they're in it. And they don't always get to exercise that muscle because they need to take a job that they can get, or they, the script didn't turn out as good as they had hoped, or, the director wasn't as strong, whatever the reason, because it's a crapshoot. You're starting from scratch every time. And so when you have, when you achieve a level of success where your peers say to you, hey, good work, it does bring everybody's game up, and it does make everybody say, wow, that little kid that was watching the movies in Ohio or wherever is suddenly, being looked at in a different way. And you do have the eyes of the world on you, and the press of the world is there, and there's nothing more intimidating than having 9,000 flashbulbs go off all at the same time, or strobes, whatever, because it's just, it's dizzying. And for some people, it's the first time they have that exposure because they're working on their first film or a documentary or a little film shot in Louisiana or something that for $1 million that suddenly is getting all the attention. Or maybe it's a big $200 million movie that everybody is talking about. It's the great equalizer because success in the film world is such a crapshoot. And yet the people who work in it, everybody has human flaws, but in the end, that underlying passion for the art form and for movies in general is the one commonality. And I think that's why everybody says, I'm going to clean up for this.
Sure. Well, and as a conservative Midwesterner that's a strong disciplinarian, I love to see it because it shows that it is possible to maintain that legacy and some decorum. Well, Randy, thanks for your time. You've been very generous with us. And this is a special treat for our Oscar coverage this year. We're at the Academy. We got it right from the Authority. So book it. This will probably be one of the best stories ever.